Now let's talk about the bomb which the Israeli Prime Minister dropped today. Because the Iran war can enter uncharted territory. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has hinted that airstrikes alone may not be enough, opening the door to possible ground operations. This, even as the United States appears cautious in publicly committing to boots on the ground. So the question is, why is Israel talking about ground component that has been avoided in the previous operation against Iran? It is not clear what Netanyahu meant by ground operation when he said revolution is not possible from the air. Now, is it the redeployment of regular infantry or limited intrusion by the special forces for a limited purpose mission? I'm sure USA does not want to hold the ground, but even if they want to conduct special operations, what would be the purpose of it remains the question. Now, let's listen in to what Netanyahu said.
We can create the conditions, but they have to, they have to exploit those conditions at a certain point. It is often said that you can't win, you can't do revolutions from the air. That is true. You can't do it only from the air. You can do a lot of things from the air, and we're doing, but there has to be a ground component as well. There are many possibilities for this ground component, and I take the liberty of not sharing with you all those possibilities.
Experts are of the view that the ground operation means troops physically entering Iranian territory, targeting nuclear facilities, missile bases, or strategic assets. It could involve anything from limited special forces raids to larger military incursions. In simple terms, the idea is to weaken the regime decisively. Netanyahu has multiple options on the table, and not all of them mean a full-scale invasion. The focus could be on precision ground raids targeting Iran's nuclear infrastructure or oil lifelines. Strategic locations like Kharg Island or underground facilities like Isfahan could be the prime targets. These operations would likely involve elite Israeli units, possibly backed by US logistics, air cover, and naval support. The idea would be to hit critical assets without getting drawn into a prolonged occupation. Across the Atlantic, US President Donald Trump is striking a more cautious note. He says there are no immediate plans to deploy ground troops, but stop short of completely ruling it out. The messaging suggests calibrated restraint even as military preparations continue in the background. There is alignment in objectives, but a subtle difference in how far each side is willing to go, at least for now. Let's listen in to Donald Trump.
No, I'm not putting troops anywhere. If I were, I certainly wouldn't tell you. Iran is a serious threat to the world, to the Middle East and to the world. And everybody agrees with me. I think virtually every country agrees with me on that. So I wanted to put out that fire. And I said, if I do that, oil prices will go up, the economy will go down a little bit. I thought it would be worse, much worse, actually. I thought there was a chance it could be much worse. It's not bad, and it's going to be over with pretty soon.
But why is Trump holding back? There are clear reasons against Trump committing to ground operations. A full-scale ground war in Iran could be long, expensive, and unpredictable. There is also political resistance back home, along with fear of triggering a wider regional conflict. Add to that the risk to global oil supplies and economic stability. Added to this is the geography of Iran. Iran is surrounded by mountains, and one-third of the country is a dry desert. Any action inside buried nuclear facilities would be a very difficult mission because the entire area would be full of decoys. And then, let me tell you, we are talking about the presence of fissile material, and that is not a joke. So, has USA being misled into a war? Was this not clear at the beginning that the Iran experience is going to be different from Venezuela? And how risky will be the special forces operation inside Iran? On this issue, I am joined by Dr. Melody Sushawiz, former advisor to Benny Gantz, Ambassador Veena Sikri, Major General Sudakarji, and Major General P.K. Sehgal. Thank you all of you for joining me, but let me straight away go to Ambassador Veena Sikri first. Madam, when Netanyahu says ground component, what are we supposed to make of it?
Well, the big question, the million billion dollar question now is whether the airstrikes of the last 3.5 weeks are going to be supported by ground operations, by sending troops into Iran. And we know that for some time there has been a lot of talk that the Americans have committed to sending the 2,500 strong Marine Expeditionary Force into Iran, and that's being talked about. But President Trump has not committed. He's maintaining, as you said, his strategic ambiguity on whether ground forces will be at all used. And I think the first target of the ground forces is Kharg Island. That is being talked about quite openly as the first target, that they will take over Kharg Island and, in that sense, control Iranian exports of oil. But whether this is going to be an easy task or not is certainly a moot point. In the meanwhile, I think that there's been a kind of a global escalation by Iran of its war effort, because the two or three things have happened. There's been a big blast in the Czech Republic of an Israeli factory which was producing weapons and was a major facility in Europe for Israel, and that's been completely blasted by an unknown group claiming responsibility. Switzerland has decided that they're not going to export any more weapons to the USA because of these facilities that have happened. And we also know that there are the Iranian demand or statement that from now on, all Israeli and US officials anywhere in the world can be targets for Iranian undercover agents, I presume. They haven't said who will be the attackers, but they have declared this, that all Israeli and US officials anywhere over the world can be targeted. So this is a very dangerous escalation. The ground troops is the major one, but also this internationalization of the conflict is very, very serious. And I really hope that, that this doesn't happen, that there's a commitment that no ground troops will be used. But as you rightly pointed out, Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel is making every effort to push towards ground troops being used. And whether that commitment is already there, because even the attack on the South Parts gas field of Iran, it happened from Israel, but America said they had no knowledge, and we know that the CENTCOM and Israeli air attacks are working together. So there's a lot of ambiguity, deliberate ambiguity in the statements by all sides.
Okay, Dr. Melody, your opening comments?
Pardon me?
Yes, your opening comments, ma'am?
Well, the ambassador rightfully spoke about an international component to this conflict, but I believe that the international nature of the threats emerging from the Iranian regime have to start with been one of the reasons for this coordinated military operation. Israeli officials, US officials have been targeted and have been threatened by the IRGC and the Al-Quds forces for many, many years, just as much as pretty much every dissenter from Iran, exilians who were only recently hardly coming out of a potential attack. There was the famous attacks in 2019 in Paris. So this is really one of the reasons that shows us that the Iranian regime is not just a threat to their own people by massacring them in the tens of thousands, and because of their horrific human rights atrocities against minorities. It is also, of course, a threat to the state of Israel for the decades of funding proxy terrorists who later slaughter Israeli civilians, and because of the ballistic missiles, which today already can reach both the south of Europe and also, I'm afraid, some parts of India. And that is before speaking about the nuclear capabilities. And if you take all of that together, I don't believe there was much of a choice than what we are seeing right now, which is an unprecedented coordinated operation between the US and Israel, which has one goal and one goal alone: to ensure that this global threat will no longer be a harm to the free societies in this world.
Okay, General Sudhakar ji, coming back to the issue of the boots on the ground, in your opinion, are we talking about holding the ground, or are the Americans looking at special operations inside Iran? And for the for the viewers, what's the difference?
Yeah, Kartikeya, good evening. Thank you for inviting me for your show, and my very warm greetings to distinguished co-panelists. Well, the question which you have raised is boots on ground. Boots on ground could be by covert means and by overt means. what you and me keep hearing and reading is generally by overt means. Even that overt means also has got covert means. In the instant case, one has to understand the size of this country and the terrain, the topography. The size is approximately 2,330 kilometers northwest to southeast, around 1,800 to 2,200 kilometers west to east. The kilometers I am talking of. And starting from west to northwest, north, northeast, going on to the extreme end of eastern flank, it is all covered with very high mountains going as high as to 14,000 feet, got a lot of peaks and very rugged terrain, is not suitable for A or V vehicles for, going across the terrain or the grain of the country. Now, the only possible avenue is from the Pakistan side, where they have a common border of 909 kilometers. This is the only opening which has got isolated hills, or in military parlance, they call it knolls, and they have desert terrain, multiple avenues available for any military offensive or any kind of action in a collective form. My assessment suggests that if at all the boots on ground is being contemplated, this is firstly is not going to happen overnight. It is going to be a long drawn, long haul. One, because the environment, the operational environment have to be prepared. So how do you prepare? So to answer this question, one has to identify what is the selection of aim. What aim do they have? Is it the complete regime change? They have knocked off the head of the octopus, fine. But there are multiple heads which are existing in 31 provinces. It has been decentralized. The command, control, coordination, authority, the clerical, the religious, radical elements in the authority, they have further been delegated to the 31 provinces. The entire concept of their deployment of the leadership, they have undergone a dispersion. The theory being heard is dispersion of the leadership, dispersion of the infrastructure, dispersion of the defense industrial sectors. They have gone underground, not by the depth of the bunker busting bombs which America has. They have gone far, far deeper than that, 600 meters under the mountains. So, under these circumstances, the population which had shown some kind of signatures of going against the regime, because of the external attack and the way the attack has been orchestrated on 28th February, it has, rather than putting people apart from each other, it has actually galvanized the people. These are the contradictions. The military, which was presumed to have actually changed the sides, or this is one of the prerequisites to, to overturn the regime, the military has to be on the side of the attacker. Has that happened? Is IRGC small enough to swing their mind, to hack the mind, and can any junior in the hierarchy in IRGC challenge or disobey the orders of the military authority? Same is the case with the religious, not fanaticism. This is a theocratic society. It has to be understood what is the meaning of theocracy. And if you see the complete structure of Iran, from top down to the lowest level, there are layers of checks and balances. If one authority goes, then the majlis is there. It is called an assembly of experts, 88 of them. Thereafter, they have an assembly of executives.
Okay.
After that, they have an assembly of, guardians. Okay. Guardians are supposed to scrutinize every law which is passed and supposed to be launched by the supreme leader. They are supposed to scrutinize the sanctity of the Sharia law. Should not be compromised at any level. When you go to the provinces have got same system. So therefore, under the circumstances, going by the expression of boots on ground, firstly, how much of troops are they contemplating? Will America be there with Israel?
But Sudhakar ji, there is a catch. The political objective of the war was not to allow Iran to go nuclear. That was the stated political objective. That is the stated political objective, General Sehgal. The issue is that they should be actually hunting for the fissile material. I mean, say the operation should be on the fissile material. It should not be about holding the Kharg Island, because the objective was not allowing Iran to go completely nuclear.
Firstly, as far as America is concerned, America is still not clear as to what the political aim or military aim is. They have no clearly defined strategy so far. Donald Trump speaks in one language, Hegseth speaks in another language, Rubio speaks in yet another language, and there is contradiction between the three of them. As far as Israel is concerned, Israel is very clear as to what is their political and military aim, but they've not been able to achieve that political and military aim either in Gaza or in Yemen or in Lebanon, though the war has taken on place for 2 years.
Why do you
As
say
far
that,
as-
sir? That they have
as
not
far-
been able to achieve the political objectives, sir?
Their political objective was to make sure that Hamas is completely out of question, and there should be no future role for Hamas. And then they also said that those people who had been kidnapped, they should be returned without. They returned only after America introduced a ceasefire, etc. And America brought in an agreement. And then they also said that Hamas should have no role in the future governance. Even today, 50% of Gaza is controlled by Hamas. Under the circumstances, and Gaza was only 41 kilometers by about 15 to 20 kilometers. And despite two years of bombardment, they've not been able to achieve that aim. Similarly, they thought that they had completely degraded Hezbollah. Despite their ground attacks and despite their air attacks, they've not succeeded in degrading it. Today, Hezbollah is, as far as America is concerned, putting troops on ground would be suicidal for them. If you see, after Second World War, they put troops on ground in Vietnam. They suffered a massive defeat. They put troops on ground in Iraq. After 11 years, they suffered a massive defeat. They put troops on ground in Afghanistan. 16 years, how shamefully they left that place, everybody knows. In 1991, when they put troops on ground in Iraq, they had support of several nations. When they put after 9/11 troops on ground in Afghanistan, they had support of NATO. This time they are absolutely by themselves. Secondly, if they carry out even a surgical strike, if you notice, most of the surgical strikes by America have been absolute disasters. John F. Kennedy attempted Bay of Pigs in 1962. It was a disaster, and possibly that was the reason why CIA eliminated him. Thereafter, in Somalia, they attempted a similar thing. You must have seen a movie called Black Hawk Down. America suffered a massive reverse. Jimmy Carter tried it, suffered a massive reverse. Only Bin Laden was taken out by Obama. And every time that they've done it, it's on a flat ground, which is easily recognizable both from ground and by air. Okay. And the total time that they studied that area was less than 30 to 40 minutes. Here it will require prolonged operations for a very long time. And hundreds of body bags will go back. And American people are not going to accept that. Even the military commanders, if Trump listens to them, would categorically tell Trump not to make that mistake. As far as Israel is concerned, Israel has got no contiguous borders. They're 2,000 kilometers away. Netanyahu is wanting to now trap America yet in another way, because some government would have to be essentially that of American, not of Israelis, because Israelis are 2,000 kilometers away. They have no capacity whatsoever. None of the neighboring countries would allow Israeli troops to come into their land and use that as and be backed up by logistic support system from them.
Okay, very strong points, very strong points. Sudhakar ji, very quickly, then I have a question for Ambassador Sikri.
Yes, I wish you had allowed me, I would have finished off. You see, geography plays a predominant role and overriding importance in deciding the political objective and the military objective. Now, USA and Israel, they themselves are 10,000 kilometers apart. What geography is relevant to Israel is not relevant to USA. A political objective or military objective of Israel will not be same as that of USA. Therefore, what I'm coming to is this is a battle of Israel, which is being fought by USA. One. Number two, sir took a very good example. Take your mind back to 61, 62, the Bay of Pigs attack, in Cuba. What happened? The PWs
of the US just as much.
Okay, I'll come to you, Dr. Melody. I'll come to you.
Okay.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Are you finished, Sudhakar ji?
No. Give a chance to the lady. Let Dr. Melody.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Please.
That's kind. I feel the geography separating between us makes it more difficult. I hear you with a bit of a delay and acoustic difficulty, so I try to come through with a point in between. You know, there's a narrative out there trying to say Israel, the Prime Minister Netanyahu dragged President Trump into that war. I believe this is simply false. The multiplicity of threats that are relevant to Israel are just as relevant to the United States. U.S. ambassadors have been targeted by the IRGC. in killing attempts. The nuclear program and the Iranians have been threatening USA directly, calling them the big devil, meaning the fundamentalism behind the Iranian regime for decades has been a massive threat to everything that belongs to the free world that I believe also India, of course, belongs to. And when President Trump stepped out of the JCPOA in 2018, it was because he understood that diplomacy fails with a fundamentalist regime that may sign all kinds of papers, but at the same time will continue increasing the forces and testing for ballistic missiles that can carry nuclear heads. We'll continue with covert nuclear activities in undeclared military sites. We'll continue to export terrorism throughout the region and fund terrorist organizations that harm Western interests all over the world, not only in Israel. So if we look at that overall picture, the USA, this powerful nation, has enough reasons in itself and also enough strategic autonomy to decide whether or not this is a war they want to fight. And I believe the answer, the decision of President Trump was very clear here.
Ambassador
No,
Sikri?
by no means am I trying to say anything about that. Neither we are defending nor we are going against any particular issue. I was only trying to help define the objective. The political objective or objective of Israel in the instant case is regime change. And in case of USA, to the best of my understanding, it is to prevent Iran from going nuclear.
Okay.
That's it.
Ambassador Sikri?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, the objectives of this war have not been clear at all. In the beginning, it was the total focus was on regime change. And we also know that the war happened, the attack on Iran happened at a time when there were talks brokered by Oman going on in Geneva, where Iran had agreed to a lot of the conditions, including on nuclear facilities. And none of us can ever forget that in Iraq, when the Western powers went in, it was on the grounds of weapon of mass destruction, which was proved later on to be a complete mirage. A complete mirage. So now, how is it that we are hearing the same arguments over and over and over again? You know, where is it? Where is the truth? And I think that this is very, very important for the rest of the world. We can't have world peace being put into jeopardy again and again and again on the basis of theories which later on turn out to be completely false. I mean, really, I think there has to be some sense of responsibility here. And I think to say that, you know, whether Israel forced US into the war or whether it was a preconceived agreement between the two countries, that's something between Israel and USA. But we in the rest of the world, including in India, which is a freedom-loving nation, can only watch in complete horror at what is happening in the Gulf. And I don't think any two countries have the right to put the rest of the world at stake the way they are doing now. Please remember this. Israel and USA cannot decide for the rest of the world. Please remember this. We are
I fully endorse what Ambassador has said. I fully endorse.
Participants in this. So if you decide, like you did in Iraq, for weapons of mass destruction which never existed, and today you're coming back with the same arguments, and we know that when the talks were going on in Geneva, one analyst said, you know, the problem is that not there was a breakdown in the talk. The problem is that there was a breakthrough in the talks, and they were about to succeed. And then the attack came to change the regime. So please don't give us this
May
talk
I react to the ambassador?
Absolutely. You'll get the chance, Dr. Miller.
Honestness of the Western beliefs.
Okay.
Not Western, Israel and USA.
Okay. Dr. Melody, I'll come to you, Sudhakar. Dr. Melody.
Okay.
All right. So, you know, I'm wondering if we were in a situation, which luckily we're not in, where day in, day out, a fundamentalist Ayatollah leader were to threaten with the extinction of the state of the great nation of India, building the nuclear capabilities and the ballistic missiles in order to do so. If day in, day out, this were the not only declared ideology, but also the function of terrorist attacks and of, you know, terrorist proxy organization at India's border that commit horrific crimes in the name of that very fundamentalist regime. I believe your frustration would be translated into the immediate necessity of defending your own right to exist and your own security. And sadly, this is the situation we are in. And you know that you mentioned that the objectives were not clear. I believe, and from what I heard in the political communication, both of President Trump and Netanyahu, it was very clear from the beginning that the ballistic missile program development of the Iranian regime had reached a point again after it was harshly diminished in June, had reached a point where again it became dangerous and where the nuclear activities again were arranged in a matter that could not be tracked anymore. So with those
Look,
two
I think there is
developments in
also a question
tandem
of
and the
belief here.
declared and the ongoing declared intention to commit havoc and to continue with more and more October 7th against the state of Israel and against Western interests in the region, I can tell you, as an Israeli citizen who spent most of the last 3 weeks in bunkers and shelters with children that are fearing for their lives because of the very loud explosions from the Iranian cluster bombs, I can tell you it is not possible for a free democratic state to live under this kind of constant threat. And the entire people of Israel, no matter where they stand ideologically or politically at this stage, alongside with our friends in Lebanon and even in the Emirates and the other Gulf states, we are all hoping for this massive long-term threat to finally be diminished and to allow the Iranian people to live in freedom and to allow the region to live in prosperity and in stability at last.
Sudhakarji, to you. So is this intervention, is this, Sudhakarji, I'll come to you, madam, I'll come to you. Veena ji, I'll come to you. You're there with me. So Sudhakarji, is the Israeli action in West Asia making the place more stable or unstable?
Precisely. This is what my point is. In any time, if you have decided that conflict or war is going to give you a lasting peace and stability, well, do you have a certain exit point? What is the exit point in the end state the USA and Israel are looking at? By no means we are discounting the issue with regard to stability, safety. What Israel is going through with Iran and its proxies, India has been going through with Pakistan ever since its independence. So we are, every second there has been a murder, there is a killing. Does it mean that we invade Pakistan and decimate or decapitate the leadership? If that be so, Field Marshal Muniz should have been decapitated within 24 hours of Operation Sindoor. That would have been a target. We should have been there to restore or take back our Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. That's not the issue. Issue is what I tend to agree with what Ambassador Ma'am has said. It is the larger global stability. Is it in any way giving us the end state we are looking at? Lasting peace? No, lasting peace is not the outcome of a conflict which is mindless and doesn't have any logic and doesn't have any rational. Therefore, what is the solution? Solution is not by attacking,
Sometimes you need a clear victory before you can have lasting peace, and that
How
is
can
true,
you define,
especially
ma'am?
Okay,
when you're
okay.
dealing
Let's
with
go one by one.
fundamentalist
Sudhakarji, let's
authoritarian
go one by one. Ambassador Sikri and then Dr. Melody.
I am only have one thing to say. Exactly what Dr. Melody has said. If you replace the word Iran with Iraq, this is exactly what we were hearing before the invasion of Iraq and the weapons of mass destruction. The same words, Saddam Hussein, and now it's Khomeini. Please, let's look at world peace. I know that Israel is very interested in world peace. Why didn't you accept what Iran was saying in the talks in Geneva? Why don't you accept now what they're saying about, the thing about the state of Hormuz? So please, violence is not the answer to everything. Invasion, Israeli people have died. Israeli people, we know the figures are not coming out, but we know how much injury and destruction there has been to Israel itself. So, I mean, the people of Israel,
Madam Ambassador,
the children who have died, the destruction of infrastructure, the people of Iran count for something, 1,500 have died, 1,000 have died in Lebanon. So, I mean, everybody's economy is being affected. Please, I think you've got to understand the voices coming out. This is a repetition. This is like a nightmare. What was being talked about
Madam
Iraq
Ambassador,
is about
allow
Iran
me,
now.
allow me just to rectify
Nightmare.
one thing, which, you speak about the Iraq analogy a lot. And you speak about it in a sense that says there were no weapons of mass destruction, so it was all a great fake story and a lot of havoc for nothing. Allow me to put that aside and not enter my opinion about what happened in Iraq, but really focus on the Iranian threats. You could not possibly, with all due respect, in your right mind claim that the nuclear threat emergent from the Iranian regime, the terrorist threats, the threats of ballistic missiles that are hitting us on a daily level in the entire Gulf region right now, that could possibly be carrying nuclear warheads. You could not possibly claim that these are all fake threats, because I can tell you, look into the skies. It's a matter of several minutes until I will have to leave this panel discussion and go back into the shelter, because we are being attacked on a daily level. Right right now with horrific Iranian cluster bombs.
Who
So with
started
that
it?
threat
Who
in
started it?
place, and
Okay.
knowing that even though the intention, the destructive and dangerous fundamentalist intention of this regime has been known globally, and still there were attempts to come to a diplomatic agreement. I believe President Trump really tried until the very last minute. The moment he understood that this regime will never be willing to give up on their nuclear capabilities, will never be willing to stop funding terrorist proxies with
Okay.
hundreds and millions of
It's not
dollars a
even the
year
Geneva
while their own
talks.
people are
In
starving and
Geneva talks, they had
lacking a
agreed.
basic stable economy. With that in mind, I believe the military option was the last resort, but possibly the best option when we're looking at the multiplicity
Okay.
of threats. And one last sentence to that. Sometimes in diplomacy, and you probably know that much better than myself, but sometimes in conflict, you need either, conflicts end either because of an agreement, because of exhaustion, sometimes, and especially when you're dealing with fundamentalist and authoritarian regimes, you require a clear victory in order to come to a lasting peace. And sadly, but yes, hopefully, there will be a clear victory for the free world in this terrible war against the Iranian regime.
Dr. Melody, I have a question for you. Dr. Melody, I have a question for you. Dr. Melody, I have a question for you. I mean, say, Iran is a state. Who gives the right to any country to decapitate its political leadership? If that becomes the international norm, where are the rules? Then Pakistan can do it in Afghanistan. Afghanistan can do it in Oman. India should have done with Pakistan, as Sudhakar ji has said. We have been victims of terrorism. We should have gone and taken out all their politicians one by one. Myanmar can do it in Thailand. Thailand can do it with Cambodia. Where does this end? If we start decapitating the political leaderships.
The question or the answer really depends on the context. And when there is a clear convergence between the political leadership and the terrorist infrastructure, the nuclear appetite and ambitions, the fundamentalist ideology that is threatening the entire region, when that all comes together within the political leadership, I believe that they are a legitimate target. And if you ask the Iranian people that are celebrating on the streets, I believe they will agree, and they are daily, day in, day out, thanking the state of Israel of helping them come their freedom, their rightful, deserved freedom, a tiny bit closer.
Okay, let me take a closing comment, madam. Let me take a closing comment from General Sehgal. He has been very, very quiet, very, very patiently raising his finger. I really wanted to come to this point, but maybe next time when we talk about taking out a regime, the similar words were used in Iraq, and depacification led to fundamentalist forces erupting in Iraq and creation of ISIS, but that's a different debate. Closing comment from you, General Sehgal. I'm sorry, there was so much of...
Dr. Melody, unfortunately, being an Israeli, is getting involved sentimentally and emotionally.
I'm sorry, I couldn't understand what the gentleman says.
People of Iran to decide whether they want to have a regime change or not. It does not call for intervention by America or Israel. Second thing, America and Israel said they had carried out a preemptive strike. They got definite inputs that Iran was going to attack them. It's an absolute nonsense that Iran had no intention whatsoever, nor did they have the capacity and capability to carry out an attack against Israel, which has got the largest and the most battle-tested and battle-proven army, and the world's largest military power, America. Under these circumstances, taking out their political leadership and 40 of their top people is something that is completely immoral and uncalled for. And if you notice what Starmer said in his parliament, he said this war is absolutely immoral and there is no way that we can get along with it. Spanish Prime Minister said something similar. Meloni said something similar. Kerry said something similar. Merz initially, the Chancellor of Germany initially was in favor, but later on he also retracted and said no. Macron said no. If you've seen, nobody across the globe is in agreement with what America is doing or what Israel is doing. You cannot do something to another country. And now Netanyahu is categorically realizing that there is absolutely no way that he can achieve his political military aim without putting troops on ground. And there is no way that he can put troops on ground. And if he does put troops on ground, they'll be absolutely wiped out. There's no doubt in my mind whatsoever. Carrying out a surgical strike at Entebbe or carrying out in Iraq was a different ball game. Here, war is on, and under the present situation and present circumstances, if you put troops on ground to take out that 400 kgs of uranium, you have no idea where it's hidden. You have no idea whether it's in Isfahan or whether it's in 2 or 3 or 4 different places. And it requires a very major operation, fully backed up by America, and it will be a long-lasting operation. It cannot be done overnight.
Okay.